Our mission today is to deconstruct how a late-blooming, intensely anxious animal defied every traditional timeline of athletic success.
It became an absolute terror on the track.
Yes, one of the most devastating competitors in history. We are talking about tap dance Shichi.
It's such a wild story.
Yeah.
Because to really grasp the scale of what this horse eventually pulled off, you have to understand the environment he was born into.
Right, let's set the stage.
So tap dance Shichi was born in 1997. And in the Japanese racing world, that specific birth year produced a generation that was just packed with superstars.
Oh, totally.
You had horses like Air Shakur, Agnes Flight, Agnes Digital. These were your textbook prodigies.
Hitting all the marks.
Exactly. They were winning the most prestigious events right on schedule at age 3. They hit every single benchmark of excellence. And then you have Captain Shichi,
Right.
who, all the way through age 4, was utterly, completely ordinary.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. Because I was looking at his family tree in the sources, and it's basically equine royalty.
Oh, the pedigree is incredible.
Right, but how do we get a name like Tap Dance Shichi out of that pedigree? Because to me, it sounds like a joke name for a very serious animal.
It does sound a bit silly, but it's actually based on a very rigid naming convention.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So in horse racing, you have the father, the sire, and the mother, which is called the dam. His sire was a hugely successful American horse named Pleasant Tap.
Okay, Tap.
Right. And his dam was a mare named All Dance. So you combine them, Tap plus Dance.
Makes sense so far.
Then you factor in the ownership. He was owned by the Yushin Horse Club. As a branding exercise, they attached their stable suffix, which is Shichi, to all their horses' names.
Oh, like a corporate logo almost?
Exactly. They had famous horses like Gold Shichi and Espor Shichi. Put it all together and you get Tap Dance Shichi.
Okay, so it sounds upbeat and flashy, but the irony here is just heartbreaking.
It really is.
Because early on, that name took on a tragically literal meaning. The source text highlights some really alarming facts about his early days. This horse was a nervous wreck.
Beyond just normal nerves, yeah.
Right. During a routine walk, he panicked so badly that he chomped down and actually cut his own tongue.
Which is terrifying.
It's not just pre-race jitters, that is a full-blown panic attack.
Right.
And because of these issues, his debut on the track had to be delayed all the way to March of his 3-year-old season.
Which is super early to the party when your peers are already winning major trophies.
Yeah, they're lapping him. And after that tongue-biting incident, he became terrified of other horses.
Completely terrified.
Whenever he was in the saddling enclosure, surrounded by the pack, he would lose whatever composure he had left. He would just step frantically in place, vibrating with fear.
Yeah.
Unintentionally, the name Tap Dance Shichi became this perfect, tragic description of his coping mechanism. He literally looked like he was tap dancing.
And because he was expending all of his energy just trying to manage his terror before the race even began, his actual performance suffered.
Naturally.
Through age 4, he was essentially stuck in what the racing world calls allowance races.
Let's clarify that for the listener real quick. What does an allowance race actually mean in this context?
Think of allowance races like the minor leagues.
Yeah.
It's a class of racing for horses working their way up the ranks, but it is nowhere near the elite level. He was just another face in the crowd.
Wow.
Now, there were tiny flashes of ability. He managed to scrape together a strong third-place finish in a race called the Kyoto Shimbun High, but it looked like a total fluke.
Just a lucky day.
Yeah. There were zero indicators of the greatness to come. The only consistent thing about him was his inconsistency.
Even when Tap Dance Shichi turned 5 and finally reached slightly better company, he was still wildly erratic.
Which brings us to a really fascinating puzzle. In the athletic world, whether we're talking humans or equine, age 5 is often considered past the prime for a sudden, startling leap in ability.
Yeah, the window is closed.
The prodigens have already established the hierarchy.
Right, and this is where I really have to push back on the narrative a bit. You're telling me a horse was completely mediocre for 4 years, which is an eternity in a racing career, and then suddenly figures it out at age 5.
It sounds impossible.
It defies everything I understand about athletic peaks. Was this horse actually just a late bloomer physically, or was he entirely capable the whole time and just holding himself back?
It was a management problem.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he didn't magically grow new muscles at age 5. It all came down to a fundamental shift in how he was handled.
Okay.
Before a race called the Challenge Cup, another rider suggested they bring in a new jockey named Tetsuzo Sato. Sato took the saddle, and the result was instantaneous. Tap Dance Shichi won his very first graded stakes race. From that single victory forward, Sato became his permanent jockey all the way until retirement.
So what was the secret? The text says Sato just understood him, but what does that actually mean in practice? How do you suddenly ride a nervous horse to a major league victory?
What's fascinating here is that it comes down to the mechanics of control.
Okay.
When you have an athlete with profound anxiety, the standard instinct is to try and fix them, to force them into a conventional mold.
Make them act normal.
Exactly. Usually, if a horse is panicking and trying to bolt, a jockey will fight them. They'll pull back hard on the reins, trying to dictate the pace and calm the animal down.
Which probably makes it worse.
It does. Sato realized that fighting a 1,000-pound prey animal just creates more panic. He didn't try to stop the tap dancing.
Wow.
Instead of pulling back, Sato effectively dropped his hands. He gave the horse permission to use his flight response.
So instead of telling him to calm down, Sato basically said, if you're terrified of the other horses, let's just get as far away from them as possible, as fast as we can.
Precisely.
And once they cracked that code, they set their sights on the Arima Kinen, which is a massive end-of-year race in Japan.
Huge race.
Going into it, Tap Dance Shichi was a heavy underdog. He was the 13th favorite on the betting board.
No one saw him coming.
The heavy favorite was a mare named Fine Motion, and her strategy was to go right for the lead. But instead of settling into the pack, Tap Dance Shichi attacked.
He went right after her.
He pressured Fine Motion immediately, completely disrupting her rhythm. He passed her on the backstretch and opened up a huge lead.
He took control of the narrative. By running aggressively from the front, he secured clean air.
Right.
He didn't have to worry about being bumped or crowded by the pack, which, remember, was his greatest fear.
His trigger.
Exactly. Now, he didn't actually win that Arima Kinen. A younger star named Simbali Chris S. caught him right at the end. But Tap Dance Shichi held on for second place.
And holding second place against a younger elite champion proved that his new strategy worked. He could compete at the highest level.
Absolutely.
But let's be honest, moral victories don't get you remembered.
No, they don't.
To become a legend, you can't just hold on for second. You have to completely dominate. And that brings us to his absolute peak at age 6.
This is where he experienced a true glow-up. He stopped being a surprise and started being a terror.
I love that.
At age 6, he won an open race, captured the Kinko Show, took a strong third in the Takazuka Kinen, and then won the Kyoto Daisho 10 by leading wire to wire.
Just untouchable.
Every step was building the momentum for his masterpiece.
The Japan Cup. If you were going to write a Hollywood script for a career-defining moment, you would write this exact race.
Without a doubt.
The Japan Cup is one of the most prestigious international races on the calendar. The stage was set perfectly for drama. The ground was heavily waterlogged and thick with mud. It was a world-class field of competitors, and the pressure was entirely on the favorites. Tap Dance Shichi blasted out of the gate and turned the Japan Cup into a solo exhibition. While every other world-class horse was out there struggling in the mud, choking on dirt and trying to find their footing, he just kept pulling away.
It was incredible to watch.
And the sheer margin of his victory is what makes this historic. He crossed the finish line 9 lengths clear of the next horse.
To put that in perspective, a 9-length victory in a race of that caliber is completely absurd.
Yeah, that's not normal.
Not at all. These are the best horses in the world, and they're usually separated by fractions of a second. It was the largest winning distance in JRA G1 history at the time. For a horse to run as fast as they can right from the start and never let anyone catch them over that distance requires a freakish level of stamina. He didn't just beat the field. He entirely demoralized them.
I love the quote from the race caller. As Tap Dance Shichi was crossing the line, miles ahead of everyone else, the announcer just yelled, "This is how you win from the front to over 2,400 meters.
Iconic call.
But here's where it gets really interesting, especially when we look at the human side of this story. The last horse to win the Japan Cup wire to wire, meaning they led from the very first step all the way to the finish line, was a horse named Katsuragi Ace, all the way back in 1984.
And why does 1984 matter to our jockey, Tetsuzo Sato?
Because watching that specific 1984 wire-to-wire victory by Katsuragi Ace is the exact moment that inspired young Tetsuzo Sato to become a jockey in the first place.
Wow.
He saw that race, decided his life's path, and then, nearly 20 years later, he was the one in the saddle recreating the exact same miracle that started his career.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is absolute poetry. It illustrates perfectly how a true partnership works both ways.
Yeah.
Finding the right jockey didn't just elevate the anxious horse to legendary status. The horse also allowed the jockey to achieve his ultimate childhood dream.
They unlocked each other.
Exactly. Without Sato's empathy, tap dance Shichi probably retires in the minor leagues. Without tap dance Shichi's raw speed, Sato never gets to recreate the defining moment of his youth.
It is the perfect peak. But the problem with a strategy that is entirely reliant on running away from your fears is what happens when you suddenly can't outrun them anymore.
Right.
Once you reach the summit, the only direction left involves dealing with the unpredictable chaos of reality. At age 7, the chaos came back.
Initially, he maintained his dominance, which is exceptionally rare for an older horse.
Defying the odds again.
At 7, he defended his Kinko Show title. In the Thoroughbred Kinnan, another frontrunner tried to steal the lead, but tap dance Shichi just surged past him on the backstretch and powered away for another Group 1 victory.
Unstoppable.
He was so good that he earned a trip to France for the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe, arguably the most prestigious turf race in the world.
But the universe intervened. The plane carrying him to France suffered a severe mechanical failure, forcing a prolonged delay on the tarmac.
Oh, that's brutal.
Now, put yourself in the mind of this horse. We already know he is claustrophobic and prone to panic attacks. Being trapped in a metal tube that isn't moving is a literal nightmare scenario for him.
The worst possible situation.
He didn't arrive in France until just 2 days before the massive race. Dealing with immense stress, a totally foreign environment, and zero rest, he understandably finished 17th.
But even after that disaster, he showed resilience. He came back to Japan, fought bravely to hold second in the Arima Kinnan, and even stayed in training at age 8 to win a 3rd consecutive Kinko Show.
Which is wild for an 8-year-old horse.
It is. But then came the second and final stroke of terrible luck.
During a training session, he was kicked by another horse. And this is where the mystery comes in. Was a subsequent decline purely physical, or did his brain just shatter?
It's a great question.
The source text specifically notes that regardless of the physical healing, he was never the same afterward. His performances dropped off a cliff.
It raises a vital point about the psychology of confidence. We just spent this entire deep dive discussing how his late career dominance was built on a very fragile mental framework.
Right, weaponized anxiety.
Exactly. Sato taught him how to weaponize his anxiety by outrunning the pack. But when an athlete's success relies entirely on feeling safe in the lead, a sudden, violent trauma like being kicked out of nowhere can shatter that illusion of safety.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
A physical bruise from the kick probably healed quickly. But for a horse that started his career literally trembling at the sight of other horses, that incident permanently unspooled his confidence.
He couldn't trust his environment anymore.
He could no longer convince himself he was safe. After finishing 12th in the Arima Kinnan, they finally retired him.
It is a sobering reminder of how delicate peak performance really is. One bad moment can undo years of psychological progress. But let's look at the legacy he left behind, because it is staggering.
Oh, absolutely staggering.
Despite the late start, the intense anxiety, and the chaotic end, his lifetime earnings exceeded 1 billion yen.
1 billion yen.
Yes, wild.
For the syndicate that owned him, he was an absolute triumph. It fundamentally validates the patience they showed, or perhaps the sheer stubbornness, in keeping him in training through those deeply frustrating early years.
His post-racing life had a bit of drama, too. He entered stead duty to breed the next generation, but his offspring never really inherited his unique, blistering speed.
It's hard to pass on a lightning-in-a-bottle personality.
True. Public interest eventually faded, and he retired from breeding in 2010. He spent some time as a riding horse, and there was actually a period where internet sleuths and fans lost track of him entirely.
People were genuinely worried.
They were, which just shows how deeply the public connected with his underdog story. Thankfully, the text confirms he was tracked down and found safe, living out his days peacefully at a private farm.
Which is such a relief. But the real weight of his story isn't just that he survived. It is what he represents to anyone studying performance.
Yeah, exactly.
Tap dance Shiji broke all the traditional rules of how success is supposed to be structured. He was not a prodigy. He struggled immensely. He matured far later than biology suggests he should have.
But he still made it?
But once he found the right collaborator, he ran champions into the mud.
I think Tap Dance Shichi proves that greatness does not always arrive neatly packaged, and it certainly doesn't always hit the expected deadlines.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more.